Greetings. It's nice to see you again. And those who are new here, you're very welcome. Today, I'm embarking on a new type of video. And that's because today it's March 2nd. And on March 8th, I'm moving out of my current home. So, in the background, since the beginning of February, I have been busy going through transitions to make this move possible. And I never wanted to stop getting my videos up on a daily basis. I did my longer form videos, which are the 6 to 8 to 9 minute videos about pain strategies that are evidence based and free. So I wanted to reach out to anybody who was struggling with physical or even emotional pain to help them feel connected and to have some improvement in their life. So I kept doing that. Plus, I do the shorts, which I call my cheeky little health shorts. If you haven't seen them yet, please check them out. People are really responding well to them. So I have a lot of transitions going on in my life right now. And in the background, my husband came down with a severe respiratory infection, and he's doing much better now. But that was just going on in the background. And so I wanted to continue and have stability of reaching out to even 2 or 3 people who may be looking at my video every morning when it comes out. And I always post it at 9 a.m. California Standard Time right now. Daylight savings times in a couple of weeks, so that may change. Anyway, I am going to be present on the videos like I have been, but a little bit different until I get settled in my new place. And so what I decided was it's time to share some backstories about some of the interesting things that are going on in my life because I've worked as a public health educator, a pain relief practitioner, a chaplain, and an interfaith minister. And was a bird keeper up until a few weeks ago. And there's some interesting stories about the bond between humans and animals. And in my book that I published in September, um, is talks about how I got into having pet birds in my life. And again, I did publish this book. I am a published author, but this channel is not to be a funnel to try to generate sales. That's not what this is about. I'm here because I suffered from chronic complex regional pain syndrome. And I developed it after being hit by a drunk driver in 1986. And it took 30 years to recover. And during that time, I felt very isolated and very desperate and alone, though I was married, but lying there in bed or being stuck in home. And YouTube wasn't around then because I didn't have an iPad until it was invented. And so once I got an iPad and I was still struggling with CRPS, it made a difference for me that I could watch things on there that were different than broadcast news. So I could choose my topics, and I really liked it. And so I like it as a format. And I think it's a wonderful place to be present on, although I'm not talented and skilled in communication skills, but I'm working on it. So hold on to your attention because I'm going to be back in a minute after I do my little video introduction and share some information with you. So this is what I want to talk about today. We decided at the beginning of February that it was time for us to transition out of a 4-bedroom house and move into a 3-bedroom. Right now, it's going to be an apartment, and then it may become a condominium. We may invest in that. But one of the reasons we were able to do that is my flock of birds, which started out at the beginning of the year, I had 6, and then my eldest bird, Sophie, passed on. And one of my other birds was also in the late stages of life, and I was doing hospice care. You see, my birds were rescue birds. I took them into my house over the past 25 years. Some of them had health problems, and one of them was blind. One of them had seizures and cardiovascular disease. And they all had some kind of health challenge, but I was able to keep them alive all this time by my special care that I provided them. But it was inevitable that they were going to pass on. At least 2 of them. The other 4 were much younger, and their kind of health challenges weren't life-threatening types of health problems. And having birds meant that I really couldn't travel. It was hard to find a pet sitter. Most people know how to be a dog sitter or a cat sitter. So basically, I love my flock of birds, but it really impacted how I could live and how I could travel because I could not live in a condominium by having a flock of birds. They would not allow that. nor could I go rent an apartment with a flock of birds. So it really meant that my husband and I had to stay stable in our house. Well, when my bird passed away, Sophie passed away, and I shared that in one of the videos. And then I saw the next bird, Toby, was not doing well. For the very first time, I started thinking about what would life be like with just a few birds instead of a flock of six. And then I talked to a pulmonary specialist, and he told me that my lungs that were damaged by COVID in July were improving, but they were still really challenged because the birds that I loved so much had powder on their feathers. And even though I had three huge filters in their bird room, it was still impacting my damaged lungs. And he advised me if I wanted to heal and keep improving, it was time to say goodbye to my birds. And I was very fortunate to find two different loving homes that took in the four remaining birds. Two went to one place and the other two went to another place. And they're very happy there. And the important thing is that the bird keepers that adopted them are much younger than my 72, almost 73 years of age. Now, you have to understand parrots are much different than dogs and cats. They have an enormous lifespan, and my two birds that did pass on, they were close to 50 years old. But I have some younger ones that were only in their early 20s. So they had many, many good years ahead of them if they're well taken care of. And I really believe the placements that I found, they're going to be well taken care of. So once the birds were put into other living environments, my husband and I could reflect and think, well, this is a big house. We have 4 bedrooms. It's just the two of us. And like I said, I'm going to be 73, and my husband is 82 years old. So we're looking at, why do we need such a big house? Our kids and our grandkids live far from us. So it was time to decide to put it on the market. Now, putting a house on the market means you have to go through all your possessions and clean out everything, and which we have been doing in the background of me uploading all my videos and creating them every day, and plus taking care of my husband who had, like I said, a respiratory infection, and he is doing really well now. So that's where I'm at now. I spent the past weeks packing up the house, outplacing my birds. But the other thing I did was I had to change my front yard. My front yard is famous for attracting children. There's this elementary school next door, and the kids love walking by my house. And I have special stepping stones that they'd like to jump and play hopscotch on. Well, to sell my house, I had to outplace all the wonderful fantasy statues that I had in front. But the neat thing is, there was a wonderful woman who heard about my garden. She came and rescued all the statues and all the whimsical things that I had that were really enchanting. And she lives right next to an elementary school in another town. And now those elementary school kids will be delighted when they walk to school every morning and they see these wonderful little images and characters. So I feel really good about that. Now, I'm talking about my birds and my garden because they were all part of my healing journey. When I was living with the persistent pain, the burning pain down half the side of my body, I started getting into the pet therapy. And at the time, I was allergic to dogs. So my option was birds. And that's how I got into my birds. And then as I started 30 years into having my CRPS, I learned about neuroplasticity, and that we talk a lot about it on my channel, Unwinding Pain. And I added to the neuroplasticity. I went out in the front yard and built a garden. And this is at my other house that I used to live in. And that's where, because I went out in front of my house every day, I started talking to neighbors who I really didn't know all that well because I was bedridden and I was, did not have an active life. And that was it. It was blooming of who I am today, is that I could communicate with people. And my garden became a focal point. And people from many different neighborhoods would come and look at my perennial garden with all these amazing pieces of art in it. And that's when I bloomed as an artist. And it was through my CRPS where I became a jewelry artist also. And every necklace that I wear when I sit here and tape these videos have come from my challenged hands. And the reason I started making the jewelry was I actually lost the use of my dominant hand from the CRPS, and I had a sympathectomy where they tried to cure my terrible burning pain, and that helped it damaged the nerves so much that I really lost the use of this hand for 26 years. And then an occupational therapist suggested to me that I should get some big wood blocks that had holes in them that toddlers and children would use, and get some rawhide strands and try to learn how to do that. And that led me to believing one day when I heard a childhood friend had breast cancer, I decided I would make her a bracelet because a new bead shop had opened in town. I went in and bought the beads, and it took me 4 or 5 hours to string a little tiny bracelet. But the important thing is I did it, sent it to my friend, and it really lifted her spirits. And from that point on, I noticed I had some extra beads and started experimenting. And I started spending hours and hours. And the important thing was, I didn't know if I had talent and if it was going to look good when I made the jewelry, but I was using my hands. I was moving my hands. And I had my TENS unit put all over my body because that was what my pain management system was, and an ACE bandage. And I would push myself to move my hand, desensitizing it, getting the flexibility back in, getting strength. And fast forward from that point on, in 2022, when I suddenly had an opportunity to write a book, I sat down at a computer for the very first time and learned how to do Microsoft Word. So I went to type my book, my manuscript. So I went from not being able to use this hand to learning how to string rawhide into a wooden bead, and then made jewelry. And all that movement strengthened my hands enough that I could sit and type at a computer. And believe me, if you had told me that one day, forget even being an author, but one day I would sit at a computer and type in my stories and all my ideas and all my research, I would have been really surprised. And I'm sharing that with you as an untold story for you to know that I was not a wizard. I wasn't a super person. I was just somebody making it up as I go along, figuring out what I can do to feel better. And that's why I show up on YouTube, because I know what severe pain is. I know what it's like to want to have pain medication. And I had the disappointment because I was on fentanyl and it did not take away the burning pain. I say the burning pain went from my neck all the way down into my left foot. So that was a disappointment. But I tapered off of that when I found out how to use neuroplasticity and desensitize that terrible burning and re-educate my body to become the person that you see before you today. A senior woman who is going gray, and I'm a grandma, but I'm still thriving, and I love life, and I love sharing time with you. So that's it for today. I'm telling you that background of what I've been doing, but you should tune in for tomorrow because I have a really interesting story I'm going to share. And it has to do with making plans in your life, and also emotional pain that people can carry. Because even though when people talk about chronic pain or persistent pain, a lot of people identify with some kind of body part. Well, the brain and the heart, they're body parts. And if you have emotion and feeling stress, or even feeling some shame about making not the right decisions in life, all of that is an area that I work in as a chaplain. And I am also a licensed clinical social worker. So I understand the mind body and all the kinds of discomfort we could carry. So it's bye for now. And I'm wishing you a comfortable week. And my boxes are all piled up around me. And it's going to be a positive move. So please, I'd like to hear from you. Take care. Bye bye.